Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well. Listen, I'm going to make a video somewhat spontaneously in response to this issue with All Things Must Pass, the special re-release of it, and also at least some comments on the situation with Bobby Whitlock. I watch his channel a lot. I hope you'll watch my thoughts. Okay, if you've been watching Bobby Whitlock's channel, or if you're a Beatles fan or an Eric Clapton fan, great music fan, you probably know who Bobby Whitlock is. I'm not going to really comment extensively on the Bobby Whitlock situation, but you might know that Bobby has been talking really for over a year on All Things Must Pass, just as part of his life in music. It's been so informative. And when they re-released this recent All Things Must Pass, I don't know the details, but apparently he removed a lot of videos that had to do with All Things Must Pass. And I don't know what the specifics were. He's apparently had some calls from them. So I'm not really commenting on that anyway. For all I know, they offered him $10 million to take the videos down. Or just threatened him, or he decided to do it. I don't know what the story is, and I'm not really going to comment extensively on that. But I did want to think a little bit about that situation, because it goes to something I've been wanting to talk about for a while, which is how corporations and copyright laws are hurting music. Now, I know everybody, there's nothing wrong with making money in music, and I know copyright is an important part of the music business. So this is not some anarchist idea of, all the music should be free. But I think the way copyright laws and corporations have taken control of music is really killing music. And I wanted to start out by having you look at some biggest box stores that are vacant in my area, because I think what's happening to America with urban sprawl and all these vacant storefronts that even just in a few cases a few years ago were these beautiful viable businesses, and now they're empty storefronts that attract rats and the sad case of homelessness and so on. That's what corporations do, and that's what they're going to do to music. What they've done to America, how they kind of use up a market and then move on, that's what they're going to do to music. And when they're done, they're going to ruin the Beatles, they're going to ruin all the music we love, and they won't have left a new generation of fans, I don't think. I don't mean to sound ominous, but that's my view. So I just wanted to share a few thoughts on this situation with All Things Must Pass. And I'm not really commenting on that album or Bobby Whitlock, but I do think it's indicative. First of all, one of the comments I wanted to make has to do with family. So I don't know what the situation with Bobby Whitlock is, but a lot of people have referred to in some of these videos. Another good guy to watch on that is John Heaton, and another one is this guitar historian. I watched a couple of his videos. He talks about it, among others. And of course, but a lot of these videos talk about the Harrison estate. Now that raises an interesting question. So the Harrison estate, I guess, would refer specifically to Olivia Harrison, George's ex-wife, and his son Donnie Harrison. Now I wanted to say a little bit about that, because in so many of these copyright cases, you'll notice it's extended family members. Now, at least Olivia and Donnie are immediate family members, a widowed wife and a son. But in a lot of cases, you have extended family members that are controlling this music that is loved by millions of people. I mean, it was a family member that sued Jimmy Page for Stairway to Heaven. It wasn't Randy California. A lot of these old blues songs, I think Robert Johnson, a lot of these songs had kind of fallen into the public domain if they were ever copywritten in the first place. And you have kind of these long lost family members that come up because they smell money and they get control of things. And a lot of times lawyers and politicians, they just they're not into music. I don't think anyone really understands a lot of those laws, really. Another one would be, when Rick Beato was threatened with the copyright strike there over some Cars song. I think it was a family member. It wasn't one of the members of the Cars. It was a family member. There's so many cases like that. A big one that really gets me is the Jimi Hendrix family. Now, Jimi Hendrix didn't leave a lot of relatives, and his father, Al, I think, passed away for quite a while. But the Hendrix family, and I imagine some of these are pretty extended family members, got control of his name a few years back. I don't think that was the case when I was a kid, but now you see all these Hendrix pedals, Jimi Hendrix T-shirts, and Hendrix become a trademark. And they're all in these Hendrix signature guitars, and I think that cheapens the legacy. And these people are trying to make money off it. And once but there's this huge affection for Hendrix that's based on the man and his legacy in a more organic way. And when people come along and just try to exploit that, it's going to ruin it, And they also end up exerting so much control over the music that, we all become consumers of the music. And once we've consumed it, all those who already loved it in the first place, it's going to be gone. It's like a consumer culture, a disposable culture. And there's so many examples like that. You see that in books, too. I think C.S. Lewis's family and Tolkien's family, they got a hold of that. And I want to make an interesting point about that. All Things Must Pass, what was that done in 1970? And George Harrison didn't even meet Olivia Harrison. I don't know what her maiden name was, but he didn't even meet Olivia Harrison until 1974, and Donnie Harrison wasn't even born until 1978. So here you have one person that wasn't even born when the album was released, and another person that didn't even know George Harrison at the time they made that album, and they're telling Bobby Whitlock what to do, who's on like every song on the album. Now think about that. Now I know there are legalities, so I'm not trying to say that family members shouldn't have an influence, particularly immediate family members. But think about that for a minute. Who George Harrison was married to when he did All Things Must Pass is Patty Boyd. He wasn't even married to Olivia Harrison, and he wasn't. And Donnie was 8 years off or whatever. So you think about that, and here's Bobby Whitlock, who was on all these songs. And he apparently has nothing to do with it. Now I don't think that's right. I believe in song. I believe the special songwriters' rights. I think George Harrison wrote those songs. It was his album. I'm not saying everybody that played an instrument on it should be equal to George Harrison or something. But if you think about it, that's pretty weird that you have a guy who was on the album who's being shunted aside by people who didn't even know George Harrison at the time. And part of me thinks that's not right. In fact, a big part of me thinks that's not right. And of course, I think we all realize you have freedom of speech. You can say what you want. But so I don't know what the situation with Bobby Whitlock is. Might have been some friendly calls or whatever. But corporations are always trying to get us to buy things we've already bought once. I mean, how many people have already bought All Things Must Pass? I don't happen to have a copy of it, or I'd show it to you. But how many people have already bought All Things Must Pass? And here, we're going to buy it again. And I don't know if the mix is good or bad. I think one of the Bobby Whitlock videos implied the mix. I think was it on the vinyl wasn't any good. But you can always remix something, remaster it, change a little bit, and try to resell it to people. And that is kind of an exploitation in a way, unless there's something really interesting or that you're fixing something. But in a lot of these albums that were done so well, why would you F with them in any way other than to try to make money? So, but I do think the issue of family members is pretty interesting because, families don't die. Donnie Harrison's going to have a child. Maybe he already has a family. I don't know. I'm sure these are nice people. I'm not cutting them down. But then you have George Harrison's grandchild and then his great-grandchild. And pretty soon the music will never pass into the public domain. The Constitution says that the copyright exists for the promotion of progress in the arts and sciences or something like that, and to protect the rights of artists and inventors. But music at some point has to pass into the public domain. So when you have families that can just control this, and in a lot of cases, I don't know about the Harrisons, but in a lot of cases, some pretty distant relatives, and these lawyers and politicians will give them control of music that millions of people love, millions of people love. And a lot of times these songs are decades old, I mean, Hendrix is 50 years old. I think Robert Johnson ended up being given to some family members. There's a Robert Johnson estate now, and these were pretty distant relatives. And when did Robert Johnson die? In the 30s? I mean, that's almost 90 years ago. So you wonder how that's going to pan out. I saw an The Blues Brothers is a great movie. Where did I see? Somebody said The Blues Brothers was their favorite movie. But, Casino Guitars, the guy said The Blues Brothers was his favorite. I think that was it. But anyway, I saw one of these editors' comments on The Blues Brothers back when you could get editorial comments and director's comments on the old DVDs. Unfortunately, we don't get that as often with streaming. But one of the things the guy said about the Blues Brothers is they couldn't make that today because of the way copyright laws have changed since the 70s when it was made with Belushi and Dan Aykroyd, because they got all those great old Sam and Dave songs and, those Ray Charles songs, and they paid for them, but it wasn't much. And he said now the minute they tried to make a movie like that today, they'd have all these lawyers on the phone wanting millions of dollars. And in a lot of cases, these artists are dead. And at some point, music has to pass into the public domain, and you can't just keep Now, all the money George Harrison made in his lifetime, definitely he should be able to give that to Olivia and Donnie. No doubt, and I believe that we should be able to inherit things. I think John Entwistle, when he died, his estate, his family had to sell off all his stuff to pay the taxes. That was ridiculous. They were selling off all his old bass guitars and that were on all these great records. I believe in inheritance, but the money that George Harrison made in his lifetime off that music, he should be able to bequeath that. And I don't know, but I think at some point you can't have all these family members just controlling things, on into infinity. That we have a public domain for music, and it has to enter into the culture, and that's so important. And the second point was a related point, because I think it's kind of similar, and that is corporations. Corporations also don't die. So when you have corporations getting a hold of all this music, that also will just keep this music in private hands for potentially generations, and that's actually pretty scary, because music is part of culture. I think music is part of intellectual property. It should be protected, but it's also part of culture. I got a couple books here. I have some notes. I'm kind of going leaving my notes behind, but I have this book here. It's an old piano vocal guitar book. If you watch some of my other discussions, I talk about the old piano vocal guitars. When I was a kid, we had millions of books like this. Look, great songs of the 60s. Listen to the songs that are... This book was published in 1974. Copyright laws were different in 74. I think they were changed in the late 70s. And then, of course, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act in the late 90s. Is that the same as the Sonny Bono Act? Really changed them. But this was a book in 74. Listen to all the songs in this book. And When I Die, that's Blood, Sweat, and Tears. California Dreamin', The Mamas and the Papas. Chelsea Morning. Chelsea Clinton was named after that song. They Long to Be Close to You, A Day in the Life, Didn't We? Don't Think Twice, It's All Right. Those are like classics, and they're all in this book with the piano vocal guitar. And we used to have a ton of books like that when I was growing up. Let me ask you, why would you buy that book today if you can't play anything? When you buy a book like this, it's to play these songs, right? And not just for yourself. We play music for others. It's not just this We play music for others. So why would you even sell this or buy this if you can't play it? And music's made to be played for other people. And these corporations, when they control music so closely now, I don't think they'd let you make a book like this today. Or if they did, it would be much more controlled. I notice one thing when I go try to buy music, sometimes I play the piano in a church. I'll look through church music, and I don't even see that many books like this anymore. I think a lot of these old piano vocal sheet music type books, I don't see them much. But I do notice when I do see books like that, they're often way fewer songs and they cost way more money. And the cover might be fancier. This isn't a very fancy cover, but the cover's fancier and it's, this special collection, and there might be 9 or 10 songs in there. Whereas this, I've got one, I think this got like 500 songs in it. It's a big, fat, thick book with all the sheet music, back when they had sheet music, piano, vocal, guitar sheet music. So corporations can't own, look at all those great songs. Why would you buy that book if you can't play it? I used to have an uncle that played the saxophone all over Upper Michigan, and he was a great musician. He didn't play fancy like Kenny G, but he just played really good melodic musical stuff. He could play in any key, and he was always in dance and wedding bands till right up before he died a few years ago in his late 80s. And he played stuff like Harbor Lights and Melancholy Baby and Sentimental Journey, and he always played with an accordion, and the accordion guy was great. But that was a man that loved songs, and he'd played songs his whole life, and that was a part of his musicianship, was a knowledge of songs. And in a way, it's like being a historian. He knew so many songs, he knew the words, he could play them in different keys. Now, a lot of his songs he played were from the 30s, 40s, and 50s. I think he started to run dry a little bit. I think his band played Bad Bad Leroy Brown, maybe a few from right around that time, King of the Road or something. But that was about as new as he got. But he knew all those songs. If you can't play and learn songs, you can't have a musicianship. That's music is songs. I think sometimes that's one of the things I see on YouTube. We're always focusing on riffs and sort of chord progressions we jam over, which I like to do. But music is songs. I mean, that's the coup de grace of being a musician, is being able to put together a good song. The Beatles learned so much from playing other people's songs. I guess they'd get in trouble today, all those gigs they did in Hamburg. A guy I used to play in this little restaurant around town, and I saw him the other day, and he said, he wants to have live music again. I'm not sure I want to go back to playing all those little restaurants for crowds of varying levels of appreciation. But anyway, a lot of times it was pretty fun, made a little money. But anyway, he told me that he the last few years he's been having ASCAP and BMI come around, and because he has a little live music there on a Friday or Saturday night. And these corporations are controlling all this music, and in a lot of cases it's music that's decades old. I play old songs now. I don't play much after the 80s really. So that's songs that are 40, 50, and 60 years old. And at some point you have to be able to play songs or you can't be a musician. And I guess they just want us to be consumers. We're just this captive market, like the Boston Tea Party. We're just this captive market. We're just supposed to consume everything. You can't be a musician if you can't play songs. And these songs that are so well loved by so many millions of people, if people can't play them, they're going to die. All the people that grew up with that music and love it, we're the market right now, and they're going to drain us of every penny, and then when we're all dead and gone, that music will be gone too, That's my belief, and it will be kind of like those big box stores you see. I just did a little tour, maybe show you some footage of the big box stores, and I'm sure wherever you live, I feel confident in saying you probably have these empty big box stores that even maybe just a few years ago were big, thriving, Walmarts, Kmarts, Targets, supercenters of some kind or another, grocery stores. And in a lot of cases, these big corporations, they make all this money off a local area, and then when the local area dries up, they move away, and they're part of the problem. When some of these local areas go south and have blight and depopulation and all that. There are a lot of complicated reasons for it, but I don't think these corporations help any. They probably even contribute to the problem. But there's like this little bubble. They ride all this consumer shopping, and then when that starts to dry up or it's not advantageous to have these stores, they just move. And in a lot of cases in our town, they'll move like a mile away. Or 2 miles away. The Walmart moved 3 times in 20 years. In each case, I don't think it was over 2 miles away. And each time they left a big empty big box store. And that's what's going to happen to music. When you see these corporations that, they buy Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan's catalog, I think, sold for $400 million. By the way, there's nothing wrong with Bob Dylan selling it. I'd sell, if anyone wants to buy my songs for $400 million, I'll sell them to Satan for $400 million. But, you can't blame Bob Dylan, but you wonder, what are these corporations going to do with it? They're going to run Dylan into the ground. They're going to make all the money they can, every little penny out of Dylan, and then when all of us who love Bob Dylan die and we're gone, Dylan will be associated with selling stuff. And if people can't play Dylan, if you can't sit and play a Dylan song, and all you're supposed to do is sort of consume it in some way, which is actually a monetized way, then Dylan will be around because there's so much residual love of Dylan's music. But at some point, we're just going to be consumers of Dylan, and if you can't share the music and play the music, then Dylan will die. And there has to be the public domain is where great music goes out to pasture, and you have to have a public domain that is viable. And I sort of think that's what's going to. I hate to think that would ever happen with the Beatles. I'm so glad Paul McCartney still owns his music, but a lot of these artists, I think David Crosby, when they sell, those corporations, they're buying that just like Walmart buys a parking lot or something. They're buying that to make money, and they don't want you to play it. They don't want to have that music used in any way other than something that benefits them financially. And they don't care if the music is hurt in the long run. And, copyright exists to protect the artists, but it also exists to protect music and the promotion of the arts and sciences. That's the same reason we have the patent. And if at any point it ever becomes a hindrance to music itself, or in the case of a guy like Bobby Whitlock, the artist, here he was on the album, and you have people that didn't even know George Harrison at the time in 100% control of it. It's a kind of a weird problem, but at some point, music has to go into the public domain. I was thinking of "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." That song is, how old is that song? It's got to be close to 100 years old. The Wizard of Oz came out in the late 30s, so those songs are still in the public domain, and at some point they are in copyright, and the songwriters for those are long gone. Irving Berlin, God Bless America. It's going to be 150 years before that song, what I read, it goes into the public domain, if ever. And what's going to happen is it'll be such a pain in the ass to ever sing God Bless America that people quit singing it. And once those of us who know God Bless America die, younger people won't know it because it will have been such a legal can of worms to ever sing the song. And someday, no one will give a shit about God Bless America anymore. But the people that run it right now won't care because they'll be dead and they've made a lot of money. And that's kind of like what's happening to our cities. It's the same thing where, you have an area that's kind of used up. And it's very sad, but we can't let that happen to music. And that's my final point, really, is about love. And music has to be governed by love. We can't be governed by experts. We can't be governed by money. We have to be governed by love. I always use the example of, science can tell you a lot of things about your digestive system. and they're experts. We should listen to them. We've got some of these things now where we need to listen to doctors and so on. That's good. But you know what science is never going to do for you, ladies and gentlemen? Science isn't going to wipe your ass when you're in a nursing home. You know, that's either love or you're paying someone to do it. But someone that loves you is going to take care of you, and that's true with music. Music has to be cared for by people who love it. And I'm not saying the Harrisons don't. I'm sure they. I'm not. Again, we're not trying to cut down the Harrisons, but if you think about it, it's kind of weird. In a lot of cases, I think that's a very good point. People who just are interested in the financial aspect of music, a lot of times they're not worried about the music itself, and that's going to hurt music because, like I said, music. If you have these people that are controlling music and want to get paid every time someone sings a song in a restaurant or something that everybody knows, pretty soon no one will know the music anymore because, that's how music is transmitted. And musicians have to be able to play music. We won't see younger people learn all the rich catalog of songs that our world has produced. It's so sad. And I believe in copyright. I believe that, I'm glad Paul McCartney's earned every stinking nickel that he has. Because he's of his creativity and imagination and skill and hard work and excellence and all that stuff. But at some point, those songs are going to have to go into the public domain, including the Beatles. Frank Sinatra. These songs need to go into the public domain at some point, and no one ever wants to talk about that. And at some point, we have to be governed by love. The artists that produce that music. That's worth so much money now. Dylan's music is worth $400 million, apparently. Okay, you can't produce music like that without love. You can't get good at anything like that without a love, a talent, and a love. Just being interested in financial interests is not enough. If you don't love it, you'll never get good at it. If you don't love something, you'll never. That's like sports. Now, there's a financial incentive to be great at sports, but it's pretty hard to imagine someone really getting to be great at baseball who didn't love it. It's hard to imagine someone getting so they could play like Clapton or any of these people who didn't love it, because you have to develop talent. And that comes out of love. And you know what else comes out of love? A knowledge of music. I think we all know people who love music and maybe don't have talent, kind of the Barney Fife, Mayberry RFD choir situation, where there are people who love music but don't have talent for it. But I don't think you could even know a lot about music without loving music. The people that know a lot of albums, know a lot of songs, love it, like to talk about it. That's a love. And you can't go to take some college rock appreciation course like School of Rock and learn all that and take a test on it. That's a lifetime of love. And that's a lot of excellence comes out of love. Financial and professional incentives are important, and there's nothing wrong with professionalism. But true excellence comes out of love. And anytime you have people controlling our precious music that don't love the music, that are willing to hurt music so that they can make money, that's not a motive of love, because artists would never hurt their music, and the music wouldn't have been produced in the first place without love, right? Sure, there's a financial incentive, but if Dylan couldn't have written those songs if he didn't love those songs. Stones couldn't have become what they are if they didn't love to write songs and perform, and the list could go on. And we always have to be guided at the end of the day by our love of music and never wanting to hurt music. And I actually think some of these policies where you have now corporations, and in some cases extended family members, that are going to be controlling music, and it doesn't look like there'll ever be any end to it. You have these corporations, they just bought Dylan like last year, and Blowing in the Wind, what's that, 60-year-old song? I mean, when is that going to go into the public domain? Blowing in the Wind's a classic, so no one's going to sing it. Every time you sing it, they're going to want you to put a quarter in the machine or something. No one will sing it. And so one of the great American songs, it's right up there with Stephen Foster or Woody Guthrie or anybody like that. It's going to die. And our laws can never ever hurt the music itself, because they're there to protect artists, not extended family members, by the way, and definitely not cousins and aunts and uncles and people that go on into subsequent generations. They're there to protect artists, but also the progress of music and arts and sciences. And if they're not doing that, then they're off. And I see some of these lawyers on YouTube sometimes, and they go, oh, well, Rick Beato doesn't understand the law, and this guy that complains about copyright doesn't understand the law, and and they explain copyright law. Ask that guy if he can play the guitar well. Ask him if he really knows a lot about music. He might. I'm not saying they don't, but I wouldn't be surprised if they don't. And someone like that, they don't care if music dies. They don't care if it gets hurt. And I do, and I'm sure most of you do. And like I said, I don't. It's not that I'm against copyright. I think it's a vital thing. I think it's a practical matter. The terms are hugely too long, and it's ridiculous now that you have subsequent generations and corporations owning these things. That's never going to stop. Copyright exists with the hope, with the promise that these songs will go into the public domain, and it's kind of like moving the goalposts. I think we see that a lot sometimes, don't we? Moving the goalposts. You keep waiting, It's a temporary thing. Copyright is supposed to be temporary. One of my favorite quotes is, "Nothing is so permanent as a temporary solution." Sometimes I remember recent events, and that sort of, everything was supposed to be temporary, and it never seems to be. And copyright's a temporary thing. That's built into it. It's a temporary measure to protect the interests of artists and inventors, and also the progress of the arts and sciences. And it's temporary. And the point at which it doesn't seem like it's temporary, and the point at which it's hindering progress in the arts and sciences, is a huge problem for those of us who love music. And I'm not convinced that's everybody. I'm definitely not convinced it's a lot of people in charge of music. They're there to make money, But the music itself that makes so much money comes out of love and talent, not business. Yes, there is a music business. It's good. But the music itself, the core asset of the music business and all the millions and billions of dollars it's generated, comes from love and talent. And we have to be able to transmit that to the next generation. So when I saw that with All Things Must Pass, I thought it was kind of sad. And I'm not really commenting on the details of that, but it clearly seems like that's what's going on, where you have a family and a corporation. As far as I can tell, none of them that I've heard, any specific names, I'm sure maybe some of them, but as far as I can tell, none of them were even there when the album was made. And that's a weird thing. That tells you that we're far beyond, protecting artists and inventors and the progress of the arts and sciences, where you have people that weren't even there, that didn't even know George Harrison, in their control of all this. And I'm not saying anything against Olivia or Donnie. They are his immediate family member. But if you think about it as a broader principle, that's pretty alarming, because it means that some of this music might just end up being controlled forever, or for so long. And like I said, at some point, it's an asset right now, because there's so many millions of people, hundreds of millions of people that love this music. But if they control it like that, it won't be able to grow. It's like animals can't mate in captivity, or like a forest. Things have to grow in a natural, organic way. And if they're in control of all this music, it's going to become a consumer item, a consumer good, a disposable commodity. And when all of us who love this music die, that music will die too. Count on it. It needs to go into the public domain. And the situation with Bobby Whitlock is a very interesting one. And I don't know the details, and I'm not necessarily commenting on that, but I do think it's interesting when you have family members and corporations that have so much power over all this music. All Things Must Pass is 50 years old. 50 years old. By the way, that's not all that old in the copyright scheme of things, but it's 50 years old. I mean, it's I don't know what the median age in America is, but it's older than most Americans and probably Brits too. I feel sure. How long will people control it? And all this other music too. So very sad. I just wanted to share those thoughts. God bless you.